In the last video, I talked about finding a home that you love. Now, once you find a home that you love, it's time to write an offer and actually try to get that home. Depending on the state of the housing market, whether it's a buyer's market or a seller's market, and we're seeing a lot of fluctuations right now in 2023, it's going to change how you write an offer. It can be a little confusing trying to figure out whether it's a buyer's market or seller's market, and traditionally at around 6 months is when it's considered a balanced market. That means that buyers have just as much of a competitive advantage as the sellers do. Over the past several years, we've kind of gotten used to homes being on the market for a very short period of time, like just a few weeks. And sometimes if a home was on the market for more than a week, it was considered slow time for that house. All that to say, my personal opinion is that a balanced market is probably closer to about 3 months of inventory. Right now in Oregon, especially in Yamhill County where I am, there's about 2 months of inventory, which means that it's still slightly a seller's market, but buyers are having more and more of an advantage. There's more homes that are sitting on the market for a longer period of time. So you as a buyer, depending on when you're buying, may have an advantage buying a home. In our buyer guide, we share a little bit about the buyer's market versus seller's market. And again, you can download that for free in the description below. All right, so when it comes to writing an offer, depending on whether it's a buyer's market or a seller's market, it's going to change how you write your offer. Obviously, if it's a seller's market and there's multiple offers, you're going to have to be more competitive if you want that house. On the other hand, if it's a buyer's market, the home's been sitting for a while that you're wanting to buy, there's a few strategies that you can use to get a better deal. So I'll go ahead and start talking about the different terms of the offer. The first and most obvious one is the price. The price of the home, which really in many ways is the most important factor. So this is literally just if a home is listed for $450,000, are you offering $450 asking price? Are you asking for $460? Or are you asking for $440? That's going to be one of the most important factors when buying a house. The next term is earnest money. Earnest money usually is around 1% of the purchase price. This is essentially something you're giving to the seller to show that you're serious about buying the home. Now, you can get this money back. Say you go through the inspection period, you find something that's just not going to work, or you can't come to an agreement, then you can get the earnest money back. So it's not just something you're giving away. Also, once you get towards the end of the transaction, this earnest money, whatever you put down, is considered a part of your down payment. Bottom line with earnest money, the more earnest money you put down, the more it shows a seller that you're actually serious about the home. The next term is financing terms. So this is, are you buying the home with cash? Are you using a loan? Is it an FHA loan? So depending on what your finance is, gives different messages to the seller. A lot of people are first-time home buyers. They may only have 1% down or 3% or 5%, depending on what kind of program they get. Sometimes low down payments can be a little bit concerning to sellers. So say something doesn't appraise properly or something comes up in the repairs that the buyer is going to have to pay for. If the buyer doesn't have any extra money, then the seller can sometimes be concerned that the deal won't go through. On the other hand, a very large down payment or a cash payment means that there's a good chance that there won't be a whole lot of hiccups and that the process will go pretty smoothly. Again, that's not actually always how it works. This is just how the seller perceives it. Some of the easiest transactions I've done have been with the FHA 3.5% down payment, and some of the more complicated ones have had down payments of over 50%. Okay, so the next term is negotiation of personal property. Most of the time, this is the fridge, the washer, the dryer, things like that, maybe a freezer in the garage. This is something that either the seller is willing to part with because they've already got their own new ones that they're going to get, or it might be that the seller wants to keep these. So you as a buyer get to decide what to ask for, and most of the time the seller will indicate what they're willing to part with, but ultimately it's part of the offer and it's negotiable. The next term has to do with the inspection period and repairs. The inspection period is usually about 10 business days long, so about 2 weeks. And this is the time for you to get an inspection and do any negotiations for any repairs that might be needed by the seller. If it's a hotter market and you're wanting to be more competitive, sometimes people will offer to do a shorter period so that the seller's not having to have their home off the market for as long if something doesn't go right. Sometimes people will also say, hey, I'm not going to ask for repairs, under a certain amount. So I'll only ask for big things, all the little minor stuff, I'm not going to ask for. But most of the time when it's not an extremely hot market, usually it's just that 10 business days and you go through that period and then you go back and forth on negotiations. The next term, which is a pretty big deal, is closing costs. This goes right in line with the purchase price because for the seller, say they've got a purchase price of, again, let's use $450,000 as an example, and you're asking for $10,000 closing costs. Well, for the seller, that's the same as $440,000 with no closing costs. But as a buyer, it can make a big difference having that extra $10,000 either in your pocket, or you can buy down your interest rate and have a lower overall monthly payment. But again, this is a really powerful negotiation tool, which I've talked about in previous videos, how beneficial this can be as a buyer. This is a good thing to talk about with your lender and your real estate agent because they may be able to structure something that is more beneficial to you as a buyer, and it even may be more beneficial to the seller depending on how you structure it. The next term is offer expiration. So when you write an offer, you give some expiration date at which the offer expires. Usually this is 1 to 2 days, and a shorter timeline kind of pressures the seller to respond sooner. If it's a hot market, sometimes the seller will have an offer deadline. So at that point, you just need to have the expiration date be beyond that point. Now, some people will still have a short expiration date even when the seller sets an offer deadline, and they'll have more of an aggressive offer up front in hopes that the seller will just accept that offer. In cooler markets, there's usually not an offer deadline, and sellers will often just accept an offer that's good when it comes in. So these are the terms of the offer. Again, make sure you download the buyer guide because we go through all of this stuff in there. It also has a bunch of other great information about buying your first home. You can also reach out to me with any questions. I'd be happy to help you out and answer those. And you can also subscribe to this channel to get more videos like this when they come out. Well, thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful. I'll see you in the next video.